Welcome to Cars, Shops, and Collections. We're trying to figure out which house to go to. I don't think it's this house. I think it is this house right here. We're gonna go see Clean Gene, that's his nickname. And Clean Gene, he was a big hot rodder back in the 50s and 60s. He's been featured in hot rod magazines, and he's got a 1971 Pantera that he's gonna show us, and he's expecting us. So we'll go in after you, Lance. At least I hope this is his house. Come on back. Yeah, so 1971 Pantera. I saw it at a car show. The thing is, immaculate condition. He's also got a Mustang, and he's got a T-Bird as well. So he's expecting us, should be here right now. Was not expecting that. All right, he's got cars hidden all over his property. Gene, hey, wow. This is my kind of man cave. Wow, wow, wow. Thank you, buddy.
Hi, I'm Clean Gene. I'm the owner of this 1971 Tomaso Pantera.
Gene, thanks again for having us. And this is such a beauty. It's art on wheels is what it is. When did you get the Pantera?
I bought it in 1975 here in Las Vegas. Owned by a very famous family, Bobby Mulroy. His father was some political office here in Las Vegas, and I think it might be the same Mulroy family of the family. And when I bought it, I couldn't afford a new one, and one of the fellows that worked for me found it in the Las Vegas Sun. I couldn't believe it. I called the guy. He was very honest. He said, "Look, it's a nice car as long as you drive it in the winter. They get very hot." And Panteras were known for overheating.
That's right, overheating, yeah.
Yeah.
So technically you're the second owner of this vehicle, and how much of this Pantera is original?
If you look at it with the hood closed, the only non-original are the front louvers. Right after I got the car, I drove it to Huntington Beach to my friend Dale Vaznayan, who was the owner of Nitrous Oxide later and a car guy. And I told him I was going to punch louvers, and he almost cried. He begged me. He says, "I'll pay you $1,000, don't do it." So I went to a place called Happy Day Louvers, and we mapped it out because the radiator, these exit right from behind the radiator, and it would let out the hot air.
Okay.
And on top of that, when they made the 71 Panteras, they didn't have scoops in the hood. Gary Hall later invented that, so all the Panteras that you see with scoops in the hood are aftermarket after Gary.
Because like you said, these things were known for overheating when they were first built. As the years went on, they were making modifications to make them a much better, supercar. So you added this just to let the heat out.
Well, that helped.
Yeah.
And at high speed, and no lift. And Panteras were noted for that. They were good up to about 130 or 40, and then you'd start getting airborne. That's when you needed the front spoiler.
But how, because you hear of the Panteras, the early, 1971, 72, that there was a lot of issues with rust. I don't see zero rust on this car.
The biggest problem that they had is where the rear cross members, I'll open the hood for you and I can show you where they
also too, this is the four tailpipes. I love this, the little mini chrome bumper here. The back of the Pantera, to me, this is, people see this, they know.
Well, I could explain underneath where mine is modified.
Well, let's see, can you open?
Yeah. On the bottom end, I could show you both ways, but this is, when I open the hood, then the purists get angry.
Okay.
My friend Blackie Gejeian he put on car shows for 52 years, and he invited them. And we used to go to the SEMA show. He picked like 15 cars out of the 2,000 cars. And out of those 15, he could find flaws. I learned to find the flaws with him. So every time he'd come back here, he'd find some type of flaw. Now, I let this car sit for about 10 years without driving it. That was a mistake. So my friend Keith Anderson helped me on the third restoration.
No, but so the inside of this though. So
The inside.
These are sold at
I'll
72,
explain
75. They were sold at Lincoln Mercury dealers. They're sold.
Yeah, they were sold at the Lincoln Mercury dealers. The early models, and let me show you this on the top of the hood. This is, my Pantera doesn't have the stripe going down the center. They put a support one, but my hood has been very stable. That was one of the modifications that they made on the car.
Because with the dealership, wouldn't they put the black coating here?
It was all undercoating.
Undercoating.
And then the wires were all over here. And I ran all the wires underneath the fender wells and came back around so that to get rid of them. And then I encased them here. The 71 Panteras had a low ratio gear end, and they have a rear cross member on it. The later model, SDS2, attached to, they made a cross member here and had them attached. The SDS2s put a higher gear ratio, which resulted in 10 miles an hour more.
All right.
But this car would out-accelerate any car on the freeway from 0 to 120.
So this new back then, what, maybe $10,000, $15,000 is what they were selling for back then?
13.5.
$13,500 for a supercar in the mid-70s. You can't beat that price.
Well, that's why they put them in Lincoln Mercury dealers.
Yeah.
Because a Ford was $3,000 back then.
Can we see the inside of it?
Yeah, sure.
Man, should we come around this side here?
One of the things that you're touching is modified that only a purist would know. These were originally made out of plastic. I had machined them out of aluminum, got them from Gary Hall, and then my friend Keith here had to put all the innards back into the, because you can't buy them.
And your background is you're a hot rodder, you've been featured in so many magazines, and all these names you're mentioning and dropping are legendary in the hot rod car
From the
world.
50s.
Your name's dropping left and right with some of these big names that worked on cars, and this is a true thrill to be here with you today and looking at these at your vehicles.
One of the other big modifications, he's taping it right now, is the speedometer. I had that speedometer made. It's actually a GPS speedometer.
Is it really?
And it's a half-inch smaller than the standard one, so I put black lucite on it, and that sticks out about 1/4 of an inch. That was featured in the Pantera Owner's Journal. I was the first one to put a GPS that matched.
So this is, as far as size when it comes to someone driving the vehicle, this is Italian design. Italian men in the 70s weren't as tall as Americans, so the interior of this is a little bit smaller. If you're above 6 foot maybe, it's hard to get inside this thing.
If you notice at the pedals, you'll see that they're sideways. You see where you enter in, and I have to wear certain shoes to start the car because my throttle and pedal. Di Tomaso, actually, the undercarriage of this was a race car. And then when he put it together for Ford originally, he started with a Mangusta with a 289, but those were even tighter yet. This is probably the only Pantera that still has the original upholstery in it. All of that is the original. It's vinyl, it's not leather.
From 71, this is all original
Yeah.
inside here. And also
At the Pantera convention where we had over 150 cars, this was the only one with the original upholstery in.
The cigarette lighter right here, I know that was a cigarette
That
lighter.
was standard, which is the waist.
Because right here, a lot of people put their hand down and don't realize they're pressing in the cigarette lighter. Next thing you
I
know,
know.
it pops out and you burn yourself. And the gated shifter too, I love the gated shifter on this.
Did you see right behind the gating, enter at your own risk?
Yeah, I saw that, yeah. Fair warning if you're
That's
passengers.
non-stock.
Okay,
And then the
that's
two
what it is.
instruments that I have down to the seat next to the right of the driver's seat here, I added those, and nobody other than NASCAR runs a coolant pressure gauge, and the second one is coolant pressure. It goes back to the tank, and that way you could tell when you build a coolant pressure. And then I put a nitrous oxide gas pressure gauge so I could see. Now I'm getting too old to turn my neck around when I'm driving, but usually I use an electric pump to fire it up, and then I shut the electric pump.
Gene, this is amazing. This is
I used
spectacular.
I put competition belts because these are made by the same guy that makes all the NASCAR belts, and the reason I did it is it has the wide waistband, so I had them out at the show, but I put them down so I don't sit on the seat where it actually tears it.
All right, so this is spectacular.
Two other things,
Yeah.
JC, the Pantera owner will notice this, but I left this stock, but these were rough castings, and I polished them and had to mask them all off and use Vaseline and sprayed a black. That's why they're shiny. And then on most Panteras, they call these the shark fins on the side. Most of them are modified where they polish them or chrome them rather, or modify them. These I just polished and put them back because I wanted to keep the stock look.
Yeah.
And I tried to do that with this. Then when I replaced all the rubber on the car, the lifts, this is my second transmission. I've got another one in hiding that I had worked. The most expensive part on this car is the transmission. It's a Gertag made in Germany. It's the same transmission that was used in the GT40s, except they turned them upside down in the Pantera. And this is a drain plug. I now use it as a checking plug.
Oh, no kidding, because it flips upside
Where
down.
I
Yeah.
add, yeah, but before it was the drain plug.
Yeah.
And then the other big modifications on this, I had these made, machined out of stainless steel, and Hall sells a trunnion bearing down in the center because that's a shifting lever that goes all the
Is
way
it really?
from the front to the back, and most people at the show keep asking me, what is that? And I matched those up at a guy at the SEMA show. I bought one little black one for $200 and sent it to him, and he made 6 of them for me.
Yeah, to get them all up to the front there. Wow.
Yeah, the slave cylinder on the master cylinder, they were Italian. This car is a mix of Italian, French, American. The window lifts were originally made in France, and they used plastic nylon gears, and they tear up. I've replaced it with brass gears from Gary Hall.
And that was one of the things too, when you send them over here, Lincoln Mercury, they're selling them. You got guys that are used to working on Lincoln Mercury, Cougar, Town Car, whatnot. Now they have to work on Panteras, and that was a learning process for the mechanics as well back in the 70s. Can we see this? Because as we're talking about this, your Thunderbird keeps grabbing my eye over here. How long have you had this?
You're too young to appreciate this car. It's usually the older ones.
I appreciate it.
I've had it since new. My sister bought it. I was too young while I was a senior in college, and she let me drive it. I bought another. I had a show 34 Ford, and I bought another one for her to drive to school and back. She was a teacher. Gil Ayala originally painted it in Los Angeles in 1964 when I was living there, and I moved here in 65, and the first time we had real cold night, and I had a rental garage on next to the Federal Building where I worked, and it cracked the paint. So Gil was a personal friend. He came back to Vegas, took 6 months.
Man, you guys got the badge right there too.
Gil has built maybe 100 cars that have been in all the magazines, and he competed with George Barris out of East LA. They used to call him the mayor of East LA. And Gil drove it back 6 months later after he fixed it. And Eddie Martinez, who was a good friend that
come around here, Lance,
passed away, and he's in all the old magazines as the #1 upholsterer.
Did the interior?
Yeah, he did the top. No, he was in LA also. He did the top, and he made special tonneau covers, and I never ever drove in LA with the top on. Even if it rained, I just put the tonneau cover with a zipper up.
You've had this car, what year is the car?
It's a 57.
So you've had this since 1957.
Yes.
I mean, the history of the thing is this car has seen here in Las Vegas. Driving through Las Vegas, I mean, this car is history right here.
What really happened, This is hard for you to convey to people.
Yeah.
When I was the first candy apple in Las Vegas.
I'm sure people knew this car when they would see it.
I'd come home sometimes down the strip. One time Buddy Hackett chased me down in a cab with his wife. Pull over, and I'm thinking, I recognized him. I'm not about to pull over, and I pulled over, and I think it was just right off of Flamingo on the strip. And he says, I want to buy this car. And I said, no, it's not for sale. He said, no, everything's got a price. I said, not this.
Yeah.
I said, I really don't want to, if you change your mind, let me know. And so when I drive on the strip, and then I get a thing at the office, I didn't believe it. They were going to, before they filmed the program Vegas with the 57 T-Birds, they came in and they wanted me to use my office and use my car, and they're going to pay me $700 a day if they drive the car, and I think it was $350, and I said, no way. But then when the 57 or the 55 through 7 T-Bird convention came to town, they would ignore me. I couldn't even, I went to the meetings and they'd look the other way because it was blasphemy to put candy apple.
Candy apple. But I love the candy apple.
Well,
and Buddy Hackett loved it too, and he didn't get it.
I also, there's only one other set of rims like this, and they're in the NHRA museum on the Mercury Comet. And these were made by the famous family of Johansson, Howard Johansson Racing Cams. They're still in business. There's two of the boys. This fellow Jerry that did mine died, but I met his brothers out at Henderson about 10 years ago. They were showing a recreated car, and when I told them I had the wheels, they couldn't believe it. They said there's only one other pair. And
it's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
All right.
Gil Ayala put the exhaust system on for me, duals. I blocked this. It's not fancy, but I blocked off. The exhaust used to come out here.
Ah, okay.
And then I took the chrome rings off back in those days because they looked too glamorous, you know, and it kind of deadened it. But as far as major modifications on this car, I tried not to, but the steering wheel, naturally, I was interested in race cars, and I wanted a spring steel racing wheel. Well, they were on all the race cars, and so I went to Bell Auto Parts when I first got the car at LA. I think it was 1964, and I bought the wheel, and the owner of Bell Auto Parts said, we don't have an adapter for that. I'll have to make you one. So I had the very first adapter made, and then under here, it's not clean. This is the way I drove it.
It's not clean. You kidding me? This is
so
clean.
No, this is just the way I was driving it. And traditionally, I always put vacuum gauges on my, just like I have on the Pantera, because with the old carburetors, you could adjust it with your gauge rather than just hooking it up. And this still has a plexiglass distributor cap. I'm probably those go from the 60s and 70s Cal Custom. I was the first one to put a fiberglass fan on. The company that makes that now is one of the biggest, but
you were kind of one of the innovators.
Yeah, and then the Offenhauser covers, I once had acid or something dripped on them, and I took it to the local plating shop, and he says, you can't chrome cast, it'll pit. He did them. I says, I'll sign a release, and he did a perfect job, and then I painted just the red in between. And so I lucked out. We had a great plater here at the time, and
Gene, I mean, you're a car historian is what you are. The knowledge
this is the only one not running now because of the transmission from sitting.
Now, my ADD is kicking as we're talking about the T-Bird here. I look over and I see your Mustang over here. How long have you had this?
Since new, 1970.
I love that too, since new. Dang!
The interesting thing about this car is this is the car I was surveilled with by Joe Yablonsky when he was after Harry Claiborne and whoever worked in the Federal Building. And hilarious, like I could be incognito in this car, the Darth Vader car with louvers on the hood and the wheels. And
Gene has a very historic knowledge when it comes to cars and a very historic background in Las Vegas history as well.
One of the, I had to special order this car, that's good, for the smog. Cleveland Motors were banned by the government. They had huge cylinder heads and valves on them where they were smoggy. So I tried to buy them locally here and I couldn't get one. I called John Vermeesh at High Performance for Ford. He says, I'll get you one. It took me 6 months, got it out of St. Louis, had it brought to Friendly Ford in Las Vegas.
What year do you think this was?
It's 73. This is the original engine in this car.
Yeah.
The Pantera is a very high performance, the rating on it is, they lowered the ratings because for racing and to get them approved. But the Pantera has a 4-bolt main, 11 3/4 to 1 compression. This is tuned down, but it's.
And this was your daily driver back in the 70s and 80s. You were driving this all the time. Can we see the inside?
Yeah, go ahead.
Come on around, let's come around back here.
The seats need repadding, but I've also I
envision you in the 70s and 80s driving in Las Vegas in your Mustang.
This is how I went to work and back.
And you called it
this paint was last painted in 1978. Wow. And I haven't polished it.
It looks spectacular. There's no swirls in it.
It's Emerald, and it's one of the few Emerald paints. They don't do it anymore. It's what they use on aircraft. I had that steering wheel made because it was off of a sports car and made the adapter. And my same friend that machined that, Blackie's cousin, machined that for me. And I finally put competition belts on this one too because I want to protect the bowel. I've had bowel surgery before, so the wider the seat belt, the more you're taken care of.
Well, this has been a treat.
The wheels on this car are kind of unique too, but they're not made anymore. They were copies of a very popular wheel that was made by Minilite, but these are aluminum. The Pantera wheels are true magnesium. If they get wet, when I was telling Sherry, she made me go for a ride because I had too much gas.
Yeah.
I told her, I said, God, if they get wet, I'm not going to come back into the show because I got to polish the transaxle. And
when the car show, you can't only have X amount of gas in your car.
They required a quarter of a tank, and I almost had it. I was close, so I drove it and got rid of the.
Well, it's funny because the Gene's talking about the South Point Car and Truck Show, which was this past weekend, and the Pantera was out there, and everyone that I spoke to that watches the show was like, "Who are you doing? What car is next? What car is next?" And I said, "I'm doing the Pantera," and everyone's like, "Whoa, you're doing the Pantera!" Everyone was just taken aback by your car at the South
I appreciate that, and that's why I show it. And for Sherry Goldstrom, I would do anything for her. Oh, now he's getting the sun on.
Yeah, exactly.
Lance
has got the eye for it. I'll tell you what, Gene, before we wrap up, can we just take a quick walk and see what was in the garage? We noticed something else when we walked in. We appreciate your time for showing us your cars and your knowledge.
One thing I'd like to show you.
Please,
here,
absolutely.
This is my life. I sent you a site on the internet, but I brought the Swedish magazines out, but I'm now famous in the Swedish magazines. But this is a 34 Ford that was very unique. The wheels, one of a kind. The only car that's ever chromed the whole hood and polished the louvers. Very first car that had no rubber on the running boards. Featured in the magazines 1955, 56. And there's from the Grand National Show that everybody likes to brag about. 1953, and there's 54, right? I think it's next to it or behind it. And I'm so proud of that because we were pioneers.
Yes,
we started it when the show first started.
Can I see that?
Yeah, I was there for the second one. And
can you see it? Okay, wait.
Yeah, that's a collector item. Wow. They've got pictures of that all over the internet. And there was one that I won from Ford Motor Company at the Winter National. Mickey Thompson, who's dead, was a good friend of mine. And some of these plaques are all for the Pantera, and there's two. I can understand winning the best engine at the Pantera Owners Convention here 2 years in a row, but that Red Rock one, I got that as the People's Choice, and Peter Brock gave me the trophy, the Brock Cobra Coupe.
Yeah.
When you watch Ferrari versus Cobra, that's Peter Brock, the guy that developed all of that for Shelby. And
the dates though, 62, 64.
Yeah, some of them.
2017, 2012, but I mean, there's another 62
all the
back
big
there.
trophies are early, and the older ones are up on the top. And
1954 from Oakland.
Yeah, that's the Grand National. That's the second one. I thought it was that other one.
And his Oscar and Emmy that he won up there. He's an EGOT winner. He's done it all.
Yeah,
he's done it all.
And this is my cousin's car, the Emperor, that Blackie had and sold. And here's on the cover of Hot Rod magazine. Also here. And this, my car was featured in about 10 magazines, and this was how to make a model of my 34 Ford. This came out 2 years ago with me getting out of the 34 in color.
Oh, look at this.
That's in a big...
Look at this guy here.
Skinny guy.
Who's this guy, huh?
This is the only car I've never built in my life, and it had all the features. The fellow died. It was an estate car, and the club was trying to keep it, and I ended up getting it. And the most valuable thing on this car, if you stand back, it has a Hillebrand quick change. The old, if I want to change the gear ratio on this, you just take that plate off, reverse the 2 gears. It'll go from a 454 to a 378. Yeah, that's what they used in all the race cars.
But also too, I mean,
and then it has Hillebrand wheels, which you can't buy. I mean, everybody wants to buy Hillebrand wheels.
But
that's a pinstriper.
The pinstriping too.
Yeah,
it's just, I mean, that's. This is what jumps out to me as well.
I took the top off because I couldn't get in and out with the top on it. It's got a Mercedes cloth, really beautiful. Yeah. I had the tonneau cover made, which is perfect, just like I had on my 57 T-Bird. My friend Dale Roush drove this to the show. She's just like Sherry Goldstrom. There's two alike. They clicked.
Yeah.
She could drive motorhomes, trucks, hot rods. She's president of the Model A Club, and those two really clicked off. She loved this car. It's the first time she drove it. She took it out of here and didn't have any problems.
Well, this has been
the rear end. When they fired it up at the show, unfortunately, this was as loud as anything.
I'm sure.
You see the funnels?
Yeah, absolutely. Dang.
I put funnels on all the cars that I've owned.
That's gonna wake up the neighbors.
Yep. And if you look at my wife's PT Cruiser and my PT Cruiser, they have funnels on them.
He's not lying.
Yeah. She drives hers every day, 10 times a day.
Yeah, and there's this one too, yeah.
This is a collector one. They only made 640. It has factory flames, and I put the duals, and it has a Gertag German transmission in this baby. The transmission is more than the entire car is worth. So it's got like 25,000 miles on it.
Gene, I mean, seriously, thank you so much for your time tonight. We spoke on the phone a couple weeks ago, and great conversation, and the fact that you invited us here tonight to see these cars, and you're a living legend. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you
we
for
really appreciate it.
Meeting with the old man.
Come
I really
on.
appreciate that.
Are you kidding me?
I'm still walking.
Yeah, absolutely. You're still driving too. That's all that matters, right?
Get off the road when you see me coming.
Whoa, here comes Gene.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, and thanks for watching. We appreciate it. If you want your car, shop, or collection featured on the show, then shoot us an email at carsshopsandcollections@gmail.com. That's carsshopsandcollections@gmail.com. And thanks for watching, and be sure and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes of Cars, Shops, and Collections.